You see, the curious thing about awakening is that once you have truly seen through the game, once the curtain has fluttered open and the stage hands are caught in the act, you can never quite pretend again. It isn't that you lose interest in the play, far from it, but the seriousness with which you once bowed and gasped and trembled softens. Life, you discover, is not a problem to be solved, but a performance to be enjoyed. And when you suddenly realize you were both the actor and the audience all along, you cannot help but laugh. The great cosmic joke reveals itself, and you find yourself both delighted and slightly embarrassed. It's as if existence itself winks and whispers, "Ah, you've noticed." But then comes the dilemma. The moment you try to tell anyone what you've seen, the magic collapses. The instant you put it into words, the infinite becomes absurdly small, like trying to pour the sea into a teacup. For truth, real truth, isn't something you can define or defend. It's a feeling, a resonance, like the hum of a violin string that needs no explanation. You cannot describe it without turning it into an echo of itself. And so many who awaken simply smile and say nothing. They sip their tea, watch the clouds drift, and let the world continue in its merry confusion, because to interfere would be to spoil the game. I remember once standing on a cliff in Devon, watching the tides sweep in and out with hypnotic rhythm, and realizing that every wave was the ocean remembering itself. Each rise and fall, each glittering crest was both an ending and a beginning, a divine breath inhaling and exhaling itself into form. And at that moment, I thought, how beautiful, how utterly pointless, and how complete. To awaken is to see that there was never anything to fix, nothing missing, no one to save. The world was never broken. It was only pretending to be. People think awakening is some grand attainment, a state of permanent bliss, a shiny badge for the spiritually advanced. But it's far more mischievous than that. It's realizing that the seeker was the sought, that the search itself was part of the cosmic mischief, the universe playing hide and seek with itself, peeking around corners, forgetting and remembering just for the thrill of rediscovery. When you awaken, you don't become more. You become less attached, less certain, less desperate to hold on to the mask. You begin to laugh at your seriousness, at the way you once believed the costume was the person. Yet, and here's the real secret, you mustn't speak of this too loudly, because the play depends upon believing the masks are real. If every actor dropped their script and walked off stage, the theater would fall silent, and the joy of pretending would vanish. The divine loves its disguises. It delights in the drama, the heartbreak, the striving. For that is how eternity amuses itself. To awaken is not to escape the play, but to bow gracefully in full awareness that it is a play. And so you go on acting, but with a twinkle in your eye and laughter in your heart. Tell me, if everyone stopped pretending, who would there be left to dance?
When I was a child, I loved puppet theaters. I remember the smell of the velvet, the tiny wooden faces painted with such seriousness, kings, dragons, jesters, all suspended by invisible threads. I used to sit there, utterly transfixed. Now, most adults forget this. We take the play of life so terribly seriously. We convince ourselves that we are the puppets, struggling to move through the world, fighting fate, begging for control. We curse the strings, cry out against the pull of destiny, and imagine some distant puppeteer commanding our every move. But awakening, awakening, is the startling discovery that there was never anyone behind the curtain at all. The hand that moves the puppet is the puppet. The dreamer and the dream are one and the same. You are the marionette, the strings, and the hand that pulls them. You have always been the dancer and the dance. It's an uncomfortable revelation at first, because we humans love our separations. We like the idea of being the hero on a journey, the one who overcomes, who reaches enlightenment. But the truth, you see, is far too simple to be impressive. There is no enlightenment apart from the light that is already shining. You are not on your way to the divine. You are the divine, pretending not to be. The universe is playing hide and seek with itself, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer creative joy. How boring it would be for the eternal to simply be eternal. So it divides itself, forgets itself, and finds itself again, endlessly. And when you suddenly glimpse this, you want to tell the world. You want to run into the streets shouting, "There's nothing to fear. There's no separate self. It's all one magnificent dance." But you quickly notice that people don't like that sort of talk. They frown, they shuffle, they whisper, "You've gone mad." Because the show only works when the characters believe they're real. The play depends upon the tension, the drama, the pretending. The awakened, therefore, learn a kind of graceful secrecy. They go on acting, smiling at the absurdity of it all, keeping the joke alive so that everyone else may still enjoy the theater. They speak in metaphors, in laughter, in art. For truth cannot be preached. It can only be hinted at through the wink of an eye or the softness of a smile. And so the sage plays his role like anyone else. He eats, sleeps, stumbles, loves, and occasionally grumbles. But within him burns the quiet knowing that the stage and the actor are woven from the same fabric of being. The curtain is not a barrier, but a veil, shimmering between forgetting and remembering. We are all the hands of the same invisible artist, painting the world with our gestures, our choices, our dreams. The difference is that some have caught a glimpse of the painter behind the brush, and have learned to keep silent, for beauty vanishes when dissected. So, we keep the curtain half closed, not out of secrecy, but out of love for the play itself. For what is a mystery without wonder? What is existence without surprise? The divine is not a riddle to be solved, it's a performance to be cherished. And perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest act of wisdom is to know the truth and still choose to bow to the illusion.
You see, the reason this truth must be concealed is not because it's forbidden, but because it's too liberating for most to bear. We imagine that people fear death, but what they truly fear is the death of the self. Not the ending of the body, but the vanishing of the story, me, my name, my face, my history, my ambitions. We fear that if we stop believing in that story, we'll dissolve into nothingness. And of course, that's precisely what happens. Awakening is the exquisite disaster of discovering that nothingness was what you were all along. But nothingness, you see, isn't empty. It's full, brimming with everything, like a still lake that holds the reflection of the entire sky. Now, imagine telling that to someone who's still clutching at their identity as if it were a life raft. You don't exist, you say. You never did. Their eyes widen, their fingers tighten, because to the ego, that sounds like murder. The mind panics. If there's no me, who's listening? Who's thinking? Who's in control? And so, this truth, though simple and liberating, arrives like a thunderclap. It shatters every certainty we've built, every belief that we're the captain steering this vessel through storm and calm. The awakened person learns to speak carefully, for one must not tear away the veil before the dreamer is ready to wake. You whisper, not shout. You hint, not hammer. I once met a man in California who had spent years meditating, fasting, traveling across India, all in pursuit of enlightenment. And one day, quite suddenly, he saw it. The whole thing. The illusion of separation, the absurdity of his striving, the cosmic joke of it all. He laughed for days. But then, when he tried to explain it to his friends, they thought he'd gone mad. He stopped eating, stopped caring, and they said he's lost his mind. Yet, in truth, he'd lost something far more precious, his boundaries. You see, the mind loves its cages. They give it comfort.
To tell someone they are already free is to rob them of the chains they've learned to cherish. That is why the wise conceal the truth in poetry and paradox. Instead of saying, "You are God," they say, "You are loved," because love is the closest word we have for the experience of unity. It's the gentle disguise that truth wears when it visits the frightened. Love does not demand you disappear, it simply invites you to soften, to open, to realize that the one you love and the one who love are not two. So, the awakened do not lecture, they listen. They do not argue, they smile. They speak through kindness, through laughter, through the way they hold a cup of tea or watch the sunset. And in that silence, the truth vibrates, softly, like a bell no one struck. The world is not ready for absolute revelation because the drama of becoming depends on the illusion of distance. You must believe you are incomplete to seek completeness. You must feel lost to enjoy the discovery of return. And so, those who know play their roles as if they didn't, letting the dream unfold with tenderness, keeping the truth veiled, shimmering just beyond the reach of words. For the truth, when spoken too soon, blinds rather than illuminates. But when you are ready, when your heart can bear its own disillusion, then the veil lifts, not with a bang, but with a sigh. And then you see, there was never a veil at all.
You see, life is not a straight line. It's a rhythm, a pulse, a dance of opposites that forever chase each other through the corridors of time. Every up implies a down. Every saint hides a sinner. And every birth carries the seed of death. We want life to be pure sunshine, but without the shadow, the light would have no form. The Taoists were right. It's the black swirl and the white swirl, each containing a dot of the other, turning endlessly in the cosmic flow. The universe plays itself like a piece of music, not to reach the end, but to feel the harmony of tension and release. We've been trained to think in terms of either or, either good or bad, success or failure, sacred or profane. But existence doesn't play that game. It's both and, not either or. Just look at a wave. It cannot rise without falling, cannot crest without collapsing. So too, awakening and illusion are not enemies. They're dance partners. You can't have the joy of awakening without the forgetfulness of sleep. You can't even recognize truth unless you've once believed the lie. The divine hides itself precisely so that it can enjoy the pleasure of being found. That's why enlightened people don't escape the world. They laugh, they fall in love, they wash dishes, they stub their toes, and sometimes they cry, for they see that the ordinary is the divine, disguised for its own amusement. Heaven and earth are not separate realms. They're two sides of the same spinning coin. The whole thing breathes itself in and out, just as you do now. So don't be too eager to get rid of your shadow. Without it, you'd have nowhere to stand. You see, even the suffering, even the confusion, is part of the dance. The moment you try to divide it, to cling to one side and banish the other, the rhythm breaks. Wisdom is not the end of duality, but the grace of moving with it, to laugh when the music quickens, to bow when it slows, to see that both are the same melody played by eternity upon itself. So, the question is not how to stop the dance, but whether you can move with it without forgetting that you are the dancer and the dance.
The truly awakened, you see, are never in a hurry to announce it. They don't go about wearing halos or handing out certificates of enlightenment. They laugh, they pay their bills, they sweep the floor, and they sip their tea as if nothing special had happened. And that's precisely the point. Because once you've seen the cosmic game, you realize there's no one left to win it. The whole drama of becoming spiritual turns out to be the last disguise of the ego, the seeker pretending not to seek. So the wise stop trying to be wise. They become simple again, playful again,
like children drawing circles in the sand before the tide. Truth, when carried too heavily, becomes ideology. And ideology, my friends, is merely yesterday's insight turned into tomorrow's prison. That's why the awakened seldom preach. They speak through paradox, through silence, through laughter. They know that a single moment of genuine stillness says more than 1,000 sermons. When someone asks, "What have you found?" they smile and answer, "Nothing at all." And it's true. They found nothing, and that nothing has turned out to be everything. There's an art to this concealment, not deceit, but mercy. For the truth, revealed too soon, can wound those still clinging to form. So they let the illusion stay, but they hold it gently, the way a musician holds a note that's already fading. They walk in both worlds at once, the visible and the invisible, knowing that one gives meaning to the other. They see the divine shimmering in the most trivial moments, the scent of rain on pavement, the laughter of strangers, the rustle of curtains in a summer breeze. Everything becomes a whisper of the infinite saying, "I am here. I have always been here." And so they continue the gentle deception. They act as if they were ordinary, because that is the divine's favorite disguise. They live among us not as prophets or saints, but as mirrors, quiet reminders that the sacred was never somewhere else. It was in the cup of tea, the sound of the wind, the heartbeat in your chest. It was in the illusion itself, waiting patiently to be recognized. The trick, you see, is not to escape the dream, but to dream it knowingly, to play your part with grace, to bow when the scene ends, and to laugh as the curtain falls. For even God, I suspect, enjoys the surprise of pretending to forget. There comes a moment, unexpected, unplanned, when the veil between the watcher and the watched simply melts away. You might be walking through the park, the late afternoon light dripping through the trees, and suddenly everything is so perfectly itself that you forget to call it beautiful. The birds, the leaves, the hum of distant traffic, all of it begins to move with one pulse, one silent rhythm. And you realize that the very act of noticing is not separate from what's being noticed. The universe is looking at itself through your eyes, listening to itself through your ears, feeling itself through your skin. The subject and the object dissolve into the same shimmering now. This, my friends, is what the mystics tried to describe but could never quite say. They called it samadhi, satori, the kingdom of heaven, but these are just poor metaphors for something as simple as breathing. It is not a vision or a trance. It's the sudden obviousness that you were never apart from anything. You are the breeze brushing your cheek, the laughter across the street, the cloud drifting above the city. The entire show is you, playing all the parts, forgetting and remembering in the same heartbeat. And here's the paradox. After this seeing, nothing changes. The bills still need paying, the kettle still whistles, the body still aches on rainy days. Yet everything is different. Because now you understand that life was never happening to you, it was happening as you. Even the struggles, the mistakes, the longings, they weren't flaws in the pattern, but the pattern itself. The divine doesn't hide behind perfection, it hides behind imperfection, knowing that a cracked cup holds the light more beautifully. In that seeing, you stop trying to hold the world together. You let it move, you let it fall apart. You trust its rhythm the way the ocean trusts its waves. There's no need to control or explain. You breathe, and in that breath, eternity exhales itself through you. And perhaps for the first time, you understand what peace really means. Not a frozen stillness, but a living surrender. The stillness of movement itself. And then, as quietly as it arrived, the moment passes. The sunlight shifts, the mind returns, and you find yourself once more in the familiar. But something deep inside smiles, because now you know that even when you forget, the truth never leaves. It's always right here, disguised as whatever you're looking at now. And so, my dear friend, we come to the quietest part of the music,
the space between the notes. This is where all the questions dissolve, not because they've been answered, but because they no longer need to be. You realize that what you were seeking was never hidden. It was simply too close to be seen. Like your own eyes trying to see themselves, or a flame trying to touch its own light. The great secret, the one that awakened people keep concealed, is that there is no secret at all. The truth was always right here, humming softly beneath every ordinary thing. It isn't something you find, it's something you stop ignoring. You see, the wave never left the ocean. It only believed it had for the thrill of returning. The dancer was never apart from the dance, and the dreamer was never outside the dream. Awakening isn't an escape from life. It's a falling in love with it. It's the sudden recognition that you are what you were searching for. You are the seeing, the sound, the silence, the laughter. And everything you've ever feared or adored was simply yourself in disguise. That's why when the truly awakened speak, they often do so with a smile that carries both joy and sorrow. The joy of seeing and the sorrow of knowing how easily we forget. But here's the beauty. Even the forgetting is part of the remembering. The silence does not fight the noise. It gives it meaning. The stillness does not reject the storm. It is the background that allows it to be heard. Life is not a puzzle to solve, but a rhythm to feel. And once you feel it, even your tears become holy water. You begin to see that everything is doing exactly what it must, including you, including this very moment. So the awakened do not boast of awakening. They bow. They go on living, loving, laughing, knowing that every step, every mistake, every heartbeat is the universe saying yes to itself. And in that yes, there is peace. Not the peace of escape, but the peace of presence. The quiet recognition that the play goes on and it is perfect as it is. And perhaps after all the words, after all the searching, the only true prayer left is silence. For in silence, everything returns home.